this locomotive if you model the steam period, or just buy what you like the look of. Really, if you don't already have one of the Oxford Rail N7s, then this is a model that you should consider. Hi there everyone, I hope I find you well. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Jenny Kirk, welcoming you back up here to the loft on Weir Yard. And today I've got a locomotive in for review. This is one of the Oxford Rail L77, or alternatively London and North Eastern Railway N7 locomotives. You might remember that we did review these when they first came out in that really quite eye-catching Great Eastern Railway grey livery. Well, we've come back to revisit this class of locomotive because I was lucky enough to be able to pick up one of the sound-fitted examples. Now these come from the factory sound-fitted with an ESU sound chip, but the price is what really caught my eye. Now this is probably the cheapest high definition sound fitted locomotive on the market today. And actually what also should be pointed out is that if you go for the plain DC versions of these locomotives, they come in at an incredibly low price for a locomotive that has a full die-cast body. It is actually really good value, and that's probably the main reason I've chosen to take to have a look at these today. So come with me in association with the channel sponsor, Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories designed by the enthusiast for the enthusiast. And I'm really looking forward to showing you this full, high-fat, sound-fitted locomotive from Oxford Rail. This is the locomotive that I've picked up. It's the Oxford Rail N7 tank locomotive, and you will remember that we did actually a couple of years ago now, when it first came out from Oxford Rail, we did a review and we were beset with a few problems on that. Now, give Oxford Rail their due. I did actually speak to them at Worley about that, and they were quite nice about it and said that they took on board some of the issues that I raised and did make sure that they couldn't occur in subsequent batches. So that's actually really good from any manufacturer. So I'm really pleased to hear that from Oxford Rail. And I thought that when these full ESU sound fitted examples came out, at the price that they were available for, it really would have been rude not to. And it gives me another chance to review this locomotive, and hopefully everything will be working just fine this time. On here, on the end of the box, we've got the catalogue number, code OR76N7 003XS, and this is the N7 loco in the BR early crest period, and it says there number E9621, but actually the running number on the locomotive is 69612, so I'm not quite sure about where that's come from. And this is the factory DCC sound fitting, but actually when we did the review of the Great Eastern Railway grey one, what did intrigue me was the fact that there wasn't really an awful lot of space inside, because there's a lot of space given over to getting some good adhesive weight in there. What actually intrigues me is that the sound fitted option from the factory is able to be fitted into this space, and they do offer this for the Dean Goods, for the Yorkshire Engine Company 060 Janus or Janus Shunter, and the Adams Radial as well. And given the prices that these are available in the shop at, it's actually a really good way of getting a sound fitted loco. In fact, the price I paid for this, it's almost a case of buying the sound chip and getting a free locomotive thrown in as well, and it is actually a really good loco. So I've dug out the one which we reviewed last time, and there are a few detail differences. So here she is, or at least here's the one which came as a replacement for that other one. And give them their due, no quibbles, I got that replaced, no problem whatsoever. So I'm quite happy with that, and it should be noted that this replacement runs incredibly well. Now, the N7 started life, at least some of them did, as the L77, which is what this is, and the model that Oxford Rail have produced is of that Great Eastern Railway built version, designed by A.J. Hill. It was actually so successful that there was a number of different batches built, and indeed the London and North Eastern Railway continued to build a number of batches. There is one that survives from, I think it's 134 that were built, and the one that does survive is actually one of the LNER builds. It was built in 1924 and was the final locomotive to be built at Stratford Works. So I know there's been a lot of clamouring for a Great Eastern Railway blue livery on this model, but it isn't strictly accurate for this particular type of locomotive. There's some differences in the cab shape and design, and I don't know whether Oxford Rail have tooled up to be able to actually produce the other versions of the N7, but I think actually a Great Eastern Railway blue version of this would sell regardless, in much the same way that the J72 from Bachmann that's been offered in that North Eastern Railway green, the real locomotive never got that green livery. I think it was actually in photographic grey, but it's actually turned out to be the best-selling version of that locomotive. I can see immediately, and this is a really nice touch, which does lead me to think that maybe there is hope that Oxford Rail have at least made the tooling flexible enough to do the different versions. We have actually got detail differences between these, not just the condensing pipe work, but also the safety valves there. You can see on the BR Black version, we have a different style of safety valves to the fully enclosed one on the L77 one. So really nice to see. Now I'm going to put this to one side and actually just going to quickly look on the other side. We don't have the condensing pipes, but we do still have that Westinghouse air pump. And what really did impress me was that when it came to playing through the sounds off the ESU decoder that's in this, is that it does include sounds specific to having the Westinghouse air pump. But first up, let's take a good look at this. It's got quite a weight to it, and what strikes me is in this age where Hornby's bringing out their premium Hornby 00 locomotives, and they are really great. I have got the Duchess of Atholl, very pleased with it, and one of their main selling points is that heavy die-cast body. But what we've got here is a heavy die-cast body from Oxford Rail. Moreover, it is an incredibly good price. When you think what we're getting here, this would be, I think in any other manufacturer's range, a premium product that would attract a price accordingly. So I know that price always comes up as being a big deal for so many modelers, especially if you're on a tight budget. And really, this locomotive, if you model the steam period, or just buy what you like the look of, really, if you don't already have one of the Oxford Rail N7s, then this is a model that you should really consider. There's something about the die-cast metal, the way that the paint sits on metal just seems so much better than the way it sits on plastic. And it's something that I said a lot when it came to the Hornby 00 Duchess of Atholl. The paint finish was so much better as a result, and we can see that same paint finish effect of the paint on real metal that does give this kind of prototypically correct sheen to the tank sides, to the boiler. And even though these could otherwise be quite slab-sided, at least considered to be quite slab-sided, it does work because it's on a metal finish on there. And we're not starved of other detail on the back of the cabs. We've got these very distinctive sort of arched windows, and I'm going to call them windows because that's how they look to me. but very distinctive of this class, and they've been done very, very well by Oxford Rail. Flush glazing, and we've got these glazing bars over the top, which would be to protect the glass from being broken, from lumps of coal getting tipped in at the coaling points. The coal load itself is moulded plastic. Now, I don't think that there's anything much underneath there. One of the things that when I did the DCC fitting on the L77 version in that Great Eastern Railway grey, was that this bit at the back here, that's where the decoder socket is hidden away. So underneath here you've got a big box that the decoder does fit into. So there's not really much scope to model it with an empty bunker. And the coal load is probably the first area where I look in there. It's reasonable, but not as good as I've seen from other models. There's a slightly plasticky look to it. It does do the job, and what I am happy to report is that with these greedy rails around the top, Oxford Rail haven't modelled it as being absolutely full. So quite sensibly, I suppose, they've given you space that if you don't like the look of that plastic coal insert, you can put some crushed up real coal over the top, glue it in, and there is space to do that without it looking a little bit odd. Inside the cab, it's a bit difficult to see. There is a load of backhead detail, and I particularly like, you can just see it there, almost like that swirly red and white barber's pole looking thing. That's the water gauge. So really nice detail in the cab. There's actually quite a lot going on in there. The glazing, I mean, this is cruel magnification, it must be pointed out. You can see that the glazing to be flush on the outside. We've got a little bit of a glazing bar going on, but actually at the front there, if there is a glazing bar, it has been very, very well hidden. And I do really, really like all of that backhead detail, and particularly this sort of white that the inside of the cab, while the rest of the inside of the cab is painted in, it does bring all that detail to the fore. You can see there the inside, those windows at the back, and that does look all right. I think it does look to be, there's like a kind of a glazing bar across the top, but it's been very thoughtfully designed so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. And that is actually pretty good design work there to be able to hide the necessities of various bits and pieces. Got those brake standards at the back. Again, it's all separately applied stuff. We're not getting a model like models of days gone by where it's one solid casting and the detail is very Spartan once you get into the tucked away areas. This does feel like a very premium model. You can see there the cab front's got those very distinctive cab windows. Nicely done, picked out with the kind of brass colour around the surrounds. Separately applied whistle, and it is plastic. It's a little bit flexible, which is good, so it will survive being knocked. And then we come to the boiler bands on there. They are very, very thin, it has to be said, but that's good. Well realised, no real fuzziness. The boiler bands are parallel. There is just a little patch there just in front of the dome. It's not quite gone on as well as it could, but actually no, pretty good effort, has to be said. Those boiler bands have been done before all this extra detail's been applied, so they do go underneath all of this pipe work. And again, this is another area where the pipework on this model does look really good. Everything there that's connected to that Westinghouse air pump. Now I'm looking down in between the frames. They are actually quite open in there, but there is something going on in there. Because it's all black, it is a little bit tough to see, but I like that space. You can see there the backs of the wheels, so it is a nice open space. Now I'm just trying to think, would there have been motion in there or not? I don't actually know, but the lack of any motion, if it is supposed to be there, isn't actually detracting from the look of this model. So I'm going to give it the benefit of doubt. I'm not going to take any marks off for that. I do actually quite like the effect. It does actually look quite good in there. The bottom of the boiler, I'm just looking. There appears to be a line across there, and I'm just trying to see. I think that's where the top of the boiler parts from the bottom. It appears to be to do with the chassis. Not entirely sure. I'm going to have to take the top off this to be certain, but if that is a parting line, it is quite visible. The rest of the lining is really nicely done, and again you can see the metal body really does bring this paint finish up incredibly well. And this is actually very reminiscent for me of the slightly similar N2 that I remember as a child with my Hornby 00 layout. So it's one of the reasons that I was very attracted to this model in this livery, is it does remind me of my childhood with that Hornby 00 N2 set in the BR Early Crest livery. Although, of course, the N7 is a somewhat different beast from a different railway company. The Cycling Lion is actually really nicely done. I can read the British Railways, and it is all sharp and clear, and there's a lot of different colours going on in there, and they've all been very, very nicely realised. Looking further back, we've got the RA5, the Route Availability 5, nice and clear, even though that is quite small text. And then moving to the bunker, we've got the 69612, really, really sharply printed on there, and more of that lining that really is straight. It's true. The different colours are applied parallel, clear, no fuzziness. I really like the lining here on the running plate as well. There's a lot of livery application on this that is done so well. We've also got that works plate just there on the front splasher, and that is really, really nicely done. Under magnification, you can actually read that. That is really, really nice. We've also got all that rivet detail there around the smoke box. Just so much extra detail on here that really is nice. The buffers are metal turned heads, spring loaded. It's pretty nice to see there. Looking below the running plate, it picks up from all 6 driving wheels, and just see the phosphor bronze spring strips in there. Brake rigging comes factory fitted, which I do like because that can often be quite fiddly to apply. And actually, seen from the side, you can actually see elements of that brake rigging, so it does actually add something on this model. The rear pony truck, well, those of you who are familiar with the back in the day Hornby 00, that was an actual pony truck, but with this we've got an axle that has a great deal of slide from one side of to the other, a little bit of twist but not too much, and then we've got couplings in NEM pockets, slimline tension locks in NEM pockets, front and back factory applied, pretty nicely done. We've also got these guard irons there that would just be used to just try and make sure that all sorts of bits and pieces, if they were on the track, wouldn't run the risk of derailing this locomotive. And we've got them on the front as well. It really is a nice package. On the front of the smoke box, again, we've got the number 69612 and a 30E shed plate at the bottom there. And they've really captured the look of this A.J. Hill designed locomotive absolutely well. The smoke box isn't an opening one, but I find that a little bit of a gimmick, to be honest with you. The lamp irons, they look a little bit almost like they've got a web that shouldn't be there. But actually, no, that's not lamp irons, is it? I think they're for holding headboards. I could be wrong, because there's a lamp iron at the top, and then we've got a couple on the buffer beam. So I think they may be for holding headboards. I could be wrong on that. We've also got the pipework factory fitted on the buffer beam, and as you can see there, N7/4. So this was one of the subclasses, the 4th subclass. There were several based on where they were built and by whom, and there were a few detail differences between them. As I said before, the preserved example has a slightly different cab to this particular example, But nonetheless, I would love to see Oxford Rail produce this in the Great Eastern Railway blue. Whilst strictly not prototypically accurate, I do think that it would be a very great seller nonetheless. And even though the usual suspects would whine and moan, I think the vast majority of modellers would appreciate such a colourful locomotive and would ensure its success and selling out. I'm really liking these connecting rods. There's a lot of fluting and detail on them. They are metal coupling rods. Really, really nicely done. All the wheels are nicely made metal and some really great fine spoke detail. The counterweights, they're spaced correctly for counterbalancing the actual motion that would have been inside on the real locomotive. Now, I want to take a look inside this, because I'm just going to go and look in the box. Interestingly enough, if you buy the DC fitted version, this is the blanking plate, and it actually comes with a capacitor on, and I'm not entirely sure whether this is for suppression or otherwise. I did ask Oxford Rail, and their representative wasn't 100% sure. He said that the factory had mentioned something about a stay alive, but of course on DC, I'm not entirely sure about that, but certainly it's one of the most eye-catching blanking plates I've seen in model form from any manufacturer, and that is definitely an electrolytic capacitor. So I don't know if it's a suppressor or otherwise, but just to let you know about that. Now inside this we have, you can see there the logo, we've got an ESU sound chip. So we've got a lot of information in the manual about the Lock Sound version 4 decoder by ESU. And this does give us all of the different functions as well. You can see the table there. And a little bit of information on decoder settings and programming. Now, natively out of the box, the chuff rate I found did seem to match up pretty well. But I'm told that by messing about with the CV settings, you can change the chuff rate, and you can also adjust things like the running characteristics of the locomotive, which of course may then need for you to adjust the chuff rate. Now I'm just looking around here. We're going to bring in my trusty jeweler's screwdrivers, and if you are getting the DC version and want to DCC fit it yourself, then we recommend the use of the wired 8-pin Train-O-Matic decoder. But this locomotive, of course, comes factory fitted with that ESU Lock Sound version 4 sound chip. So we're not going to DCC fit this particular example, but I do want to have a look inside this just to get a sense of how they've actually fitted that in. So remove the front coupling there to gain access to that screw as well, and the chassis should very carefully lift out. Now what I can see is that just at the back there, everything is in the bunker, and actually, you know what, I'm not messing about with that. I think it's simply a case of I'm going to leave that be actually. So what I will do is I'll show you how everything fits on the other one that I've got, but that is quite a tidy little package in there, and I'm not going to be the one to risk damaging that. So I'm going to actually use my Great Eastern Railway liveried version just to show you how this all goes together. And the reason for that is because, as you saw, the sound installation in this version, it's actually quite intricately packed in there, and I don't want to disturb that because I might just have a few difficulties getting that all back together. So what I'm going to do is just dismantle this version Take the front coupling out, and we've got 1, 2, and that third one there, 3, and then we can just wiggle out the chassis. Don't forget as well, I'm going to just unplug this pipe, and we can just break that free. And what you can see there then is we've got a very solid top to this model. Looking down inside, you can hear that's all metal, and you can see inside there the inside void underneath the bunker, exactly the same on this model, and that's the space that we have available for the decoder to fit into. And you can see there with the decoder, just a standard 8-pin decoder on this model. Now that actually was a parting line along the underside of the boiler, and it is a little bit noticeable, although it is nice that they always make sure to paint this in the appropriate body colour. You can see there that the motor comes with a single flywheel on the end there, but there is actually space to put a second flywheel, and I do wonder why they haven't done that, although the performance on the running doesn't, strictly speaking, need it, so I guess that could be a very good reason why. Fitting this back together, it is a tight fit on the decoder in there, but you get it in the right place, and just make sure you don't trap any of this pipe work. It is a little bit of a fiddle, and again at the back we're going to need to, on the back, just make sure that that is not jammed. There is a locating hole on the chassis, and get that to fit back in, and then it's simply a case of tightening up those 3 screws. Again, don't ever force these. It usually means you've got something like a piece of the detail or a wire even from the decoder trapped somewhere, and that is never a good thing to do. And as I said before, we recommend the 8-pin wired decoder from Trainomatic if that is the particular route that you want to go down. But you can see there it's probably a little bit more prominent on the grey version. There's that parting seam, and again on the black one you can see it just across there as well. When it came to running, the Locomotive ran exceptionally well. I was really pleased to see that Oxford Rail have actually addressed the little concerns that I had from the first batch and have put them right, and certainly this example worked flawlessly straight out of the box. Didn't even need any running in, and really pleased with the sound functions. I cycled through all of the different sound functions. They all seem to be there and all nice and distinctive, and it is a really good sound recording from this chip that is fitted. All in all, running characteristics were really, really good. And there's not really any area of note to detract on this model. Haulage capabilities was very, very strong. It handled gradients, changes in gradients, tight curves, point work, everything that I threw at it. It really didn't care. It just romped through all of it. That extra metal weight in the body does give some great adhesion, and I was able to pull some prototypically quite accurate length trains. So we come to the scores. First up is build quality, and actually I was quite pleased with this. Didn't really have any issues with detail coming off, and the actual finish that you see on here is really, really good. Everything fitted as it should, and out of the box this example ran perfectly. So for build quality, I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. Next up was running quality, and again, absolutely nothing to fault. That heavy metal die-cast body gives great adhesion, and if anything, I found that this performed even better than other similar locomotives from other manufacturers. So I'm going to give this a 9.9 out of 10. When it comes to DCC fitting and innovation, I'm actually really impressed at how they've managed to get so much in the way of sound decoder into what is actually a really tight space. If you get the DC ready version of this, do remember that you have to be quite careful in terms of your choice of DCC decoder, and in terms of a stay alive, it is a challenging fit into this model. So for those reasons, I'm going to give it a 9.0 out of 10. When it comes to accuracy and quality of finish, I really do like this all metal design of the tanks and the boiler. It really does make a difference for me in terms of the paint finish that you get from this. Inside the cab we've got some great detail, but the coal load on the back of the bunker does seem to be a little bit plasticky. Now, it doesn't seem to be removable, and I guess this is in part because the space underneath is needed for that DCC socket and all of the stuff that goes in there. But there is at least a little bit of space on top that you can cover it with your own crushed coal load, and the greedy boards above there do give some room for that without letting it look over full. I do also quite like some of the other details that Oxford Rail have incorporated between the different versions of this model. And when I showed you the Great Eastern Railway liveried grey version, you could see some of those detail differences. All in all, I'm really pleased with this model, and I'm going to give this a 9.0 out of 10. Finally, we come to value for money, and this is where this model really does score highly. I can't fault the price that you can get an all-singing, all-dancing, fully sound-fitted model for. And it is quite startling that they can do this and provide a ESU lock sound version 4 sound decoder with a locomotive for not actually that much more than you would expect to pay for the sound decoder on its own. If you go for the DC ready version of this model, I found these down to around the £80 mark from a number of retailers, and that is incredible value for money, especially in these times where we're so concerned about some models going past the £300 mark. Here we have a model that is well under the £100 mark for the DC ready, and not much more than £150 for the DCC sound. So for this, it gets the full 10 out of 10. And that gives us a final score of 47.4. A very respectable score, and certainly this is a model that I'm very pleased to add this particular example to my collection. It's also the case that I'm falling in love with these N7s, and I'm certainly looking forward to see whether Oxford Rail are daring enough to release the Great Eastern Railway Prussian Blue version that everybody seems to be clamouring for. Certainly that's one that I, for one, will definitely buy. I hope you really enjoyed that video and it was informative to you too. Don't forget as well that we've got some affiliate links in the description box down below. So if you like the look of the locomotive that we reviewed today, you can go and find either the same or similar examples. It is available in a variety of different liveries, both current and forthcoming as well. There are another batch of these locomotives announced both with and without sound, so really looking forward to those as well. Also, don't forget that sharing is caring, so tickle that like button and do please consider sharing this video on social media and let other people know about it being here. And if you haven't already done so, do consider subscribing to the channel and you'll be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself, and I hope to see you back here again next time. Take care, happy modelling, bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Tepic, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky107107, George Botterini, Andy Finch, Chris Moss, Robert Sears, MD of San Juan Model Company and Grant Line Products, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, and Mo Henry. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.